Good evening and welcome. My name is Nathaniel Welch. I'm co-chair of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee. And I'm calling this public meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. on February 10th. Today's agenda was posted on the committee's page on the town website, and this public meeting is being recorded. This meeting is held under the authority of the executive order in force until April 1st, 2022 of the remote meeting provisions suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. All votes will be taken by roll call vote. If you haven't already done so, please identify yourself on the screen. You can do this by clicking on the three dots at the top of the box containing your image and clicking on the rename feature. I'm going to ask that everyone keep their microphones muted unless you're called on to speak. And in the event of any technical difficulties, which of course never happen, if Zoom becomes unavailable and we cannot recover within 5 minutes, this meeting will be ended and all matters on the agenda that have not been heard will be automatically continued to the next Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee meeting. We are, throughout the meeting, going to offer opportunities for the public to speak up. If you have a question, please use the raise your hand feature and we will call on you. And when called on, please identify yourself with your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 2 minutes. And I'd like to thank everyone for their patience and understanding. The minutes for tonight's meeting will be taken by committee member Adrian Boardman. Adrian, thank you for once again capturing these august proceedings. At this time, I will ask the committee members to indicate that they are present when I call their name. Richard Follander.
Here.
John Soden. Yeah, okay. Deborah Ottelman.
Here.
Adrian Boardman.
Here.
Dorcas Miller is raising her hand. She's working on her sound. So we have recorded that she has raised her hand and I acknowledge she's here. Tracy Hansen.
I'm here.
Mary Beth Barker. Not here. And Nat Welch. With 6 members, we have a quorum tonight, so this meeting will continue. Our first agenda item is to approve the minutes from the January meeting. Are there any edits to the minutes that committee members want to suggest? If not, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
I need a motion first. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes. You'd think I get it by now, Matt. No.
That's okay. Second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. A roll call. Ms. Ottelman?
Approve.
Ms. Boardman?
Approve.
Mr. Follander?
Yes.
Ms. Hansen?
Aye.
Ms. Miller, can you raise your hand if you approve the minutes? Thank you.
Thumbs up.
Mr. Soden is still not here.
No, he's here. He's on camera.
Oh, Mr. Soden, are you here? Ah, yes, you are. You are present and accounted for. Would you vote to approve the minutes?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Welch approves them also. The minutes are approved by roll call vote. I'd like to invite Marcia Rasmussen, Director of Planning and Land Management, to provide her monthly update to the committee. Marcia, please go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you, Nat. The update memo is posted on the webpage. Mary Beth is able to join us. So, and was posted late this afternoon. 2A, 2B is status quo. 2A is completed. 2B is closed for the winter. 2C updates, just that the subcommittee has met 4 times to begin planning for the public forum, which is scheduled for next Wednesday, February 16th from 4 to 6 p.m. It will be a virtual public meeting. And in the process, they created a survey, which was distributed widely, and in a 2.5-week period, had over 500 responses. So congrats to the subcommittee on that. That's wonderful response. And so from the survey response, a preliminary PowerPoint has been prepared for the public forum, and 2 plans are going to be available for sketching out ideas for the public to sketch out their ideas and to submit them. We have set up a website, and I didn't put that in my memo, but it is BFRTAC, not a website, an email address, bfrtac@concordma.gov, to receive comments as we move forward. For the last, on to the next item, the last half mile of Phase 2C. I did attend the January 26th White Pond Advisory Committee meeting at the request of the chair to share the letter from Mass DOT regarding its position on the proposed 2-rail fence and the decorative metal fence near White Pond. Both items were not eligible to be included in the final construction documentation. I shared the design of the 3-rail wood fence and the proposed location for that fence, which was intended to improve safety for the trail users and in the area of the steep slopes adjacent to White Pond. Members of the White Pond Advisory Committee expressed their concerns with this decision and the potential impacts to White Pond, and asked who they should contact, but I was not prepared to answer that evening, and neither their response or their questions. So I will be following up in the near future. But I did, based on that input from the WPAC, I reached out to MDOT to suggest that an additional 200 feet of the 3-rail wood fence along White Pond might be beneficial, and that would be extended southerly toward the Sudbury town line, that the town could fund. And so a preliminary plan has been prepared for their consideration, and they are reviewing that now. And I hope to have a follow-up meeting with our design consultant and myself and the project manager in the near future. They have not yet set that date. The Phase 2D Sudbury, I pulled from their website. So they have achieved certain milestones, which I've reported on. The 100% design plans and associated materials were submitted on January 18th. The notice of intent was submitted to the Conservation Commission in Sudbury, and the hearing opened on December 10th. It's been continued to February 7th, so that must have taken place. And the application documents are available on the town's website. So if you were to query their Town of Sudbury webpage, you would be taken to their webpage that would have these links embedded in the documentation. And then the comment period for the Section 4F review was announced, and this process involves a review of proposed uses of town-owned property for associated BFRT purposes, since the construction of the project is funded by the Federal Highway and Mass DOT. And I'm not sure what Section 4F review is, so if you have questions about that, I'll have to research that and get back to you. And then the Community Connections Grant follow-up. We did receive the extension of time. It was approved by both the state and federal highway, and a contract amendment has been signed, and the work is scheduled to begin sometime this spring with Concord Public Works providing the installation. And that it has to be installed prior to or by no later than May 31st, 2022. And that there was no progress this past month on the Concord Prison Cemetery item. There's been other things going on.
Thank you, Marcia. Committee members, do you have any questions for Marcia regarding this? Richard?
Yeah, Marcia, if you mentioned in the report the possibility of extending the 3-rail fence, if that were approved, the town, you said, could pay for it. Where would that money come from? Do you know?
I will work with the interim town manager to identify those funds if Mass DOT is unwilling to pay for it as part of the project.
Thank you.
So other questions from the committee with regard to the memo from Marcia? I have one question, Marcia, which is the Community Connections grant follow-up is the bike shelter, as I recall.
Yes,
Okay.
bike shelter and racks.
Okay. We hope they'll go in this year.
They have to.
They have to. Okay. That's good. Just for the public's information, we will be circling back shortly to the White Pond question. And Mr. Galper, among others, I think, is asked to have a speak to us. I missed two committee members. I'll start with Tracy.
I was just gonna ask quickly, has the location of the bike rack changed, or is it where we were talking about before?
It's in the same location as we were
Okay.
talking about. Yeah.
That's good.
Deborah Adelman.
Two questions follow on from Tracy. Is there a sense that they'll reevaluate how many bikes, I call them city bikes, that we'll get perhaps midway through the summer? Seemed like it was a pretty small amount, and given the potential for increased traffic. So I didn't know if, I know it's all funding based, but just seemed like those bikes are just going to be used immediately.
I think you're confusing that the Community Connections grant with the Shared Streets and Spaces grant, which provided bikes for bike share
bike.
program.
Yes, I am.
Okay. The Community Connections grant was for the bike shelter, the 2 bike shelters, and the bike racks that will be in the West Concord commuter lot. The shared bikes, or the bike share program, will begin April 1st. And it is a small number, but we will start small and grow from there. I don't recall if there was a provision in the contract for increasing the number this year, but we would have to identify additional funds for future years if we wanted more.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you. My second question was, in all of the discussions with Sudbury, and as they, it sounds like they're moving along pretty quickly. What, if any, impact do we think that will have on increased traffic through Concord? We've talked a lot about the bridge is going to increase traffic. Will the Sudbury completion increase it again, or no? What do you think?
I would not venture a guess right now. Yes, there would be some increase because the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail will be connecting to the Mass Central Rail Trail. So those people who want to extend their ride or their commute to be able to use both might use that. So I'm not willing to hazard a guess right now. I think we need to look at counts over the coming year and make an assessment from there.
Yeah.
Marcia,
Yeah,
can you
and-
remind me of the target date of when Sudbury would open? I know that so far it's all the timelines have been around design and approvals and all of that. What's like best case scenario for when that would open? Do we know?
If things progress the way they should, where they go to start construction in 2023, it will probably be 2 years before they open.
Okay.
Yeah, I think on the trail count question, Deborah, the two things. One is Sudbury may have done some research into that. We don't know, so we could certainly ask them. And then the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, has a group that looks at bike riding, and they may have some ideas as well. My guess is there are going to be more people than there were, and the connection to the Mass Central Rail Trail, which is also in the process of being, I think, built and would be connected to the Bruce Freeman, would certainly increase it. And I think that's a great topic for us as a committee to keep an eye on over the next year or two and start thinking about that. The Route 2 Bridge is going to be our first one.
Right, and that's the correction, that we've got 2 years. So
Yeah.
First up is what we have in front of us, which is West Concord, the bridge. We're going to get increased traffic. That gives us 2 years to plan the next big change. So it's actually kind of good.
Yeah, which is good.
Thank you.
Any other questions on Marcia's memo? So I'd like to ask the committee if they'd be okay with us moving forward one of the the set of guest speakers, which would be the folks from the White Pond Advisory Committee, Mr. Josh Galper. Would the committee be okay with us moving that up and pushing back our Junction Park conversation for a few minutes? Any objections from the committee? And Mr. Galper, would you be ready? And I know, Mr. Kutra, you have your hand up. Can I assume that you would like to talk about the fencing as well?
Yes, a simple question to Marcia is how far along on the markers the 200 feet goes?
Great question, thank you.
The 200 feet would go to where the, I believe, where the topography begins to change, where there is that mound.
The swale, whatever it is.
Swale. Well,
Yeah.
it's actually mounded up on the easterly side of the trail. There would be a break in the fence to allow access to the trail that may exist, and we want to determine how we can keep that on state land to connect to the White Pond Reservation properties. And so that's in conversation with Delia Kay and Matt Kearney and myself. Matt Kearney is the consultant for the town.
Okay. So Marcia, is it safe to say that when we have some feedback from the state on this, that we would be able to share kind of what the drawings are, what things look like? Okay, all right, great. So we'll certainly publish that as soon as we have a chance to get it. Mr. Galper, could you introduce yourself and where you live? And then you had asked for a short time to speak to our committee. So please go ahead.
Thanks, Nat. I'm Josh Galper. I'm at 65 Stone Root Lane, and I'm here as co-chair of the White Pond Advisory Committee. Last month, I sat in on your committee's meeting and heard for the first time, as you guys did, about the state's decision to not build fencing and not allow others to build fencing. Marcia then, at my request, came to our committee meeting so that all of our committee and all of the folks who attend our meetings could hear that directly from her as well. That was very beneficial. Thank you, Marcia. We then had a follow-up meeting last night on the topic, and I'm here to report on those findings and to, I guess based on what Marcia just said, we're just going to sort of further the conversation. Where we came to last night as the White Pond Advisory Committee was a substantial upgrade from concern, as Marcia noted, to deep concern, and I would go so far to say it's really imperative that the number of expected visitors to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail not be entering White Pond, the trails, or access to the water. There's no way to fully prevent someone, but as I said last month to this committee, we really need to encourage people to move down the trail and not go to the pond. The pond's environmental state is precarious. This is potentially very damaging. Well, I mean, as you guys know, it was closed from toxic algae blooms all last summer. We've made some great progress in planning for next summer for remediation, but it's really a 5-year turnaround is what we're looking at. Deborah, I want to mention to your point, you don't really have 2 years on the Sudbury portion. The reason is, as you may be aware, there's 274 new units that are already under construction, and the first people are expected to be moving in this spring on Route 117. Those folks have direct access to the White Pond trails, which means they have direct access to the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. And the owners of that development are actually advertising access as one of the amenities. From those 274 units, we're looking at over 500 people. The town is working, to their credit, to create new signage, but there's really so little enforcement. That's a whole other work stream for us on the White Pond Advisory Committee. We recognize that nothing can prevent a committed person from getting to the trail and to White Pond off the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. There's nothing that could happen that's unrealistic to assume. So what I'm really here to say is that we're really looking for your support. And it sounds like the town actually is moving forward in a very nice way. So we decided not to pass any resolution. We haven't, we're not going to take any actions quite yet on our side. but we very much like the support of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail to find a successful outcome, whether it's fencing or planting or closing the rail trail, such that people on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail don't use that big entrance that's currently open as a way to go right onto the trails and then right down to the water. The other thing that we discussed that I'll just bring up for your guys' records is that Marcia mentioned something that came as a surprise to me at our January 26th meeting, which is that the old Picard Trust 2 property, we've always understood that it was not permitted that anything could be built there. Marcia said something to the effect of, no one's asked Delia for possible permission. So I have let the trustees of the old Picard Trust 2 property know that I don't think I can say anymore. There's no certainty about it. It's simply a conversation that could happen with Delia. But if there were to be fencing on that property, that would also help give the strong indication to visitors on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail to say, great, take a look, move along. That's good too. So I think that's all I really am here to say today. I'm encouraged by Marcia's comments about the fencing. That's the first time I'm hearing it. We've also heard from Delia that she has some ideas in the works. It might be the exact same thing as what Marcia just said. The initial feedback from Delia a couple of weeks ago was that she was going to try and have a meeting before yesterday so that we'd have it for our White Pond Advisory Committee. She let us know that that wasn't going to be possible. That wasn't just realistic. So we're waiting to hear back from her about what she might propose. And if this is the same thing that Marcia proposes, then I think that would work quite well. So that's where we're at.
Right. Any comments or questions from the committee members?
Well, I have one.
Tracy?
I'm just wondering if you could share perhaps a map with us of where this area is that you're so concerned about, because I think I might know where it is, but I want to be sure.
I have no map at my disposal. Marcia, do you have your same map that you had from your presentation to us on January 26th?
I don't have it on my computer here at home. Sorry.
There's no
Tracy,
rush.
Yeah, we can get something to you. Yeah.
That would be great. And then I'm sorry, but I don't know who Delia is. Is she a town person?
Delia Kay is our Natural Resources Director. She serves as staff liaison to the Natural Resources Commission.
Make a note to the co-chairs, we need to do a better job of onboarding our committee members and helping them know what's going on. Sorry, Tracy.
Okay.
Yeah, Delia is on the natural resources side. So Josh, we've as a committee, I think we've tried to work with White Pond within the constraints of what our charge is, et cetera. We really want to support you guys to keep the White Pond, I'm not gonna say pristine, but help it recover and get back to what it once was. Because I know as a 10-year-old, I used to ride my bike over there and swim and watch the train go by actually across the pond. So we're here, we'd like to help out, and please keep us up to date. And Marcia's keeping us up to date as well with what's going on.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
So at this point, our plan is to hear from the town. Hopefully that can happen soon. And we can be able to have a plan that everyone feels good about.
And are you also reaching out to state representatives and others to get support that you need?
We are on different fronts, but we haven't started around this particular issue yet.
Okay.
White Pond faces, the truth is White Pond faces so many threats that it's really hard. We're resource constrained. If we don't wind up with a plan between the town and the state over the next month or so, then we will need to reach out to state officials, both our state reps, and also we understand that the state of Massachusetts has talked publicly in different areas about prioritizing the health of state ponds. It does not appear that those divisions are speaking to DOT, particularly around the situation of fencing for White Pond.
Right.
So it would be something that we would need to do to reach out to different state departments and our state reps to try and make change happen here.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Galper. Mr. Gutra, you still have your hand up. Do you want to?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Nat. I think it's very difficult to deal with something that we can't see. And that's the proposal that Marcia just spoke of. And then with Delia's comment on top, not being reported to White Pond or to this committee. So I think it's premature to either say you're in agreement or you're pushing it forward and the like. We need to see what that plan really is. That 200-foot extension, White Pond access to the conservation land that is the town property, as well as the protection of our deeded access from the trust property. We need to understand that, not just the allusion to it's there, but to see it in front of our focal points with a plan. And I think that we're drawing conclusions that might be right, might not be right, but let's not hold the carrot out in front. Let's just show us what it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goutre. Any other comments? I'd like to ask committee's indulgence to move our next item forward, which would be, we've had a request from members of the Sudbury Valley trustees with regard to the Assabet River Bluff project. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, if you travel south towards Powder Mill Road from West Concord, you cross over the Assabet River property over to the right. Some things are happening there, and Krista Collins was the one who asked if she could come and speak to us. Krista, are you ready to speak? And then I would invite you to introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Sure, thanks very much. I really appreciate getting a spot on the agenda tonight. And I want to introduce my colleague, Anthony Serra, is somewhere. Oh, there he is down there. So I am a West Concord resident, but I'm here tonight wearing my hat as Land Protection Director for Sudbury Valley Trustees. We're a regional land trust, and Anthony is our Land Protection Associate. So we've been working with the town, Marcia and Delia, and the Community Housing Development Corporation and the Concord Land Trust to put together a plan to acquire the 7 acres that we're calling the Assabet River Bluff, that as you just described. We've been working on applications to the Community Preservation Committee, and that's been approved for a proposal for town meeting to fund a portion of the acquisition. There are funds coming from various housing sources to purchase an acre that will be used for affordable housing. And we've been working with the town to apply for grants to offset the cost to the town. So there's a significant private fundraising lift. Right now we have a goal of 1.2 million. The overall purchase price for the open space portion is 1.8, plus we're sort of estimating up to $100,000 in project costs. So there's $700,000 coming from the Community Preservation Fund. And then 1.2 has to be made up privately and with grants. So I'm very happy to say that we already have over 600,000 pledged from individuals. So the more we can raise in advance of town meeting, the less cost there will be to the town. And as part of the outreach and fundraising strategy, what we've done in the past on land protection projects is to put trail signs up on the property or near the property that we're trying to protect, so that people are aware of the effort. It provides some information about a website that they can go to if they want to donate or find out more about the project. And in this case, the rail trail offers such tremendous visibility for the project. So we're really hoping that your committee might make a recommendation to the town manager that we could put signs up along the rail trail. We're thinking, it would probably be when the weather starts to get a little nicer. We're going to be doing more quiet fundraising this month, and then we'll get more into the grassroots, more public phase of the campaign in March and April, leading up to town meeting. So the signage would have 2 purposes. It would be for fundraising, but also raising awareness and kind of a get out the vote effort. And what we're thinking about now is 3 different types of signs. One would be sort of just an 8.5 by 11 that might go on the trail entrance where there's sort of an informal trail onto the property now from the rail trail. And that has a more sort of detailed description of what the project is. And then we've also talked about kind of having more lawn sign type projects, the kinds you see around town when there are campaigns. And some of those might be as simple as, you know, vote yes on article, whatever, to save the bluff. And others, we're talking about having sort of a more, maybe a little bit of poetry or inspirational quote on them to get people kind of excited about protecting the land. So that's what we're thinking right now, but would love sort of feedback on what you all think is appropriate and what degree of signage and how many and where. And so I welcome your thoughts and feedback.
Nat, would it be advantageous for me to show the GIS map of the area
Yes.
that Krista's, okay.
That would be great. Thank you. And also while you're showing it, could you give us any chapter and verse about signage requirements that we need to think about, if any, in terms of town policy, et cetera?
Well, as we have done with a number of projects where people have wanted to show things along the trail, they have come to you for a recommendation to the town manager.
And
So
we're good.
I think you can, there are, usually the street signs or the lawn signs that you see around are usually asked that they put them on private property, not in the town's right of way. Since this is state right of way, it's not the town's right of way. So I don't think there is a problem there. This line here, if you're following my cursor,
Yeah.
is Old Marlborough Road and Upland Road. The Assabet River here is on the northerly side or northwesterly side. And this is the crossing at Old Marlborough Road for the, this is the crossing, I'm sorry. This is the crossing at Old Marlborough Road for the rail trail. You can see the gray line. And this is the right of way for the trail as it comes up to the Assabet River Bridge. And I think-
Could you go a little farther north? Can you pull it down a little bit?
Yep.
There we go. Okay, so we can see where the bridge is. Okay, perfect.
Right. And so I think, Krista, were you talking about just in this stretch along the trail?
Yeah,
line
I think
locations?
I think that would probably make the most sense to do it within, because there's about 50 to 75 feet of right of way before the Di Giovanni, which property brings into that's the Assabet Bluff property.
Right. So you're talking primarily in this area here?
And I think even, and then there's also, if you go to the other point, there's the that sort of informal trail that goes along the river's edge. Yeah, right about there, there's a trail entrance. It might make sense to put something there.
As I recall, Marcia, there are actually a couple of on the west side, as you're heading on the trail between Old Marlborough and the bridge, there are actually a couple of private property signs I recall that were put there when the trail was built.
The private property, no trespassing, yes.
Right,
Yes.
right. Yes, on the same side as this. So anyway, I was just a comment. There was neither here nor there. I just recall that. But the right of way goes right up to the boundary of the Assabet Bluffs proposal.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Either Marcia or Krista, can you just clarify for me? I was trying to take notes and listen at the same time, so I may have missed one piece. So CPC has approved this request, right? So the next step is for this to go to town meeting. So are you looking? So part of the signage is to raise awareness of the issue for town meeting, hopefully to get people to vote, I suppose, right, in favor of this purchase. And then it's also to help foster fundraising, which would be needed to offset the town or to help complement the town funds. So would you be doing both of those things in conjunction, or is it premature to ask for fundraising for something that hasn't yet passed at town meeting?
Well, the idea is that we'll try to raise as much money as we can going into town meeting. So because town funds alone won't cover the purchase price. So we
Okay.
want to make sure we've raised enough to actually make it, so people know that it will actually happen.
And then our fundraising efforts, is that like a prerequisite to the town being able to approve this? I'm just curious, like, is there a certain amount that needs to be raised in order for this whole thing to work? I'm just curious.
Yes, at least 700,000, but again, we're trying to
Okay.
raise 1.2. So
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
because the grants that we have applied for are certainly not guaranteed. So we want to have a buffer.
And
The idea,
in,
go ahead, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, we've talked about signs in the past at this committee. For example, I was remembering maybe it's 6 to 8 weeks, the illustrations for the elementary school, some of the children's illustrations. So signage has come up before.
Yep.
And my question is, do we as a committee, do we have guidelines for our role in the process of approving signage, the size, where they're allowed to go? In other words, what's our job with signage? And then the corollary to that is, since this seems to be coming up, and in particular, as traffic does continue, and it's a marketing thing. I mean, I'm just going to say it, more people, more opportunity. Maybe as a future meeting, Nat, we can, as a committee, talk about sustainable signage, all kinds of great things that people can use that are aesthetically pleasing, complementary to nature.
Yeah.
So two separate thoughts, but that's what they are.
No, I think that's a very good point. So noted in our list of things to cover. Other comments or questions from the committee? Tracy?
I'm sorry if I missed this, Krista, but is this is private land right now that can be built on? Is that the main concern?
Yes.
Okay.
So the alternative is, if we don't do this, essentially it becomes a large piece of property for people to, put multiple houses on, or apartments, or whatever. And if it does work, then we'll continue to maintain some natural beauty at that spot. And as I recall, looking at the plans, 1 or 2 houses are being actually built. Marcia?
5 units of housing.
5 units, okay. Okay.
Is that
Richard?
going to be accessible,
sorry.
from the trail, or that's further tucked back?
I'm not sure I understand your question. There's a rise and a slope, and yes, they abut the site for the housing will abut the right of way. I think that we can, people who abut the right of way sort of create their own paths and trails to the Bruce Freeman. There is the existing driveway is right next to it in the property. So, we could define where that spot is. There are already trails leading off of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail up to this property. So probably just take advantage of those existing trails.
Yeah. You read my mind. I was just thinking, like, years from now when this is done, are we going to have to think about requests from those new homeowners or something? So yeah, nothing certainly immediate.
I think the other point about signs is, and I will try and share these at one point, the teacher at the middle school actually sent a couple of pictures to me, and I meant to share them with the committee about the signs, and those are temporary. So I think this also feels like a temporary piece for some period of time. Richard?
I think that the sign, having the signs there is really performing a public service, in that it'll alert people that this is happening, which I think would be good. I think, however, they should be kind of neutral vis-a-vis whether it's a good idea to do it. In other words, a sign that would say, if you want to find out more, or this is Article 6 at the town meeting, here it is, and if you want to find out more, you put a QR code on there and then you can make your pitch. But I don't think it should be on the sign one way or the other. Because I don't think the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, I guess we could vote, we could take a position on it, but I think that'd be unlikely. So I think that from a public service point of view and the point of view that the rail trail, this is actually a great example of how the rail trail is allowing people who otherwise might not realize a resource in the community is there by riding by on the rail trail. Oh, I could go check that out now and find out what's going on. So if we need a vote or whatever, I'm in favor of putting up a sort of informational signs that are appropriate.
Right. Thank you, Richard. Any other comments? I'll open it up briefly to the public. Any questions or comments that the public has? Jim Coutray?
Jim Coutray, Stone Rue Lane. Having been on the Rail Trail Advisory Committee for just barely short of 8 years, this topic has come up over and over again, and the committee very clearly wanted this to be a nature trail, not free of advertising, of promotion, strictly educational in terms of the environment. I'm kind of surprised that we're asking for a redefinition of that, because that's what was used when the town approved this rail trail. And I'd like to really see it stick to quiet nature, lack of that kind of advertising. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coutray. So I think the matter at hand is we need a motion to approve, recommend to the town manager that he or she, or whoever is that, approve the placement of the signs for some period of time. I'm not sure what that period of time is. Ms. Collins, could you give us a sense of what you were thinking?
I would say no more than eight weeks. I would say March
Okay.
and April, because town
Okay.
meeting is May 1st.
Okay.
I did appreciate Ms. Edelman's comments about sustainability, thinking about sustainability, and we are always sort of torn when it comes to things like lawn signs, because they have to be weather resistant, which often makes them not recyclable. So we try to be judicious in our use of them, and are always looking for more sustainable, reusable materials. So if anyone knows of any, I'm all ears.
Are putting signs on the private property itself an option?
We could ask the landowner. There's the only 2 points where it would be visible from the rail trail are right at Old Marlborough Road. That's really the only point because the setback is so deep.
Okay, because that's one way to not involve the trail.
And we'll certainly be putting them along Upland Road too. I know there are many homeowners there who are willing to do that. So.
Okay. So I think we need to make a motion for the committee to vote.
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
But hold on, Dorcas, did you have a question?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Richard, go ahead.
I'll make a motion that the committee approve recommending to the town manager that appropriate signs be placed regarding whatever this thing is. I don't know the details of it. We can fill that in. I don't know if it's been assigned an article, but the Assabet River Bluff project to provide information for the public regarding the warrant article, and that the town manager work with planning, land management, NRC, anybody else to make sure the signs are appropriately placed and appropriate in scale, etc.
So that's a long mouthful.
Yeah, well, I know. Well, we'll have our scribe will shorten it significantly.
Well, so should we approve? Should the motion be to have one committee member draft a letter in support of the Sudbury Valley trustee request, reflecting the discussion that the committee's had? Is that appropriate for us to do?
Sure.
And Richard, do you think is it important, sorry, to include that our recommendation is that the signs be informational versus provide a stance on the issue? I know that was a comment you made, Richard. So I want to make sure I'm clear on what the
signs is a public service, correct? like a PSA. I understand the issue of signage. We've discussed it, and some folks don't want any signs. I appreciate that. And I don't want the place cluttered with signs either. I think this is a unique situation. I guess every situation is unique, but I think this is a particular one that if I was riding along and I found out something was going on there, I'd be interested in finding out more.
I think what makes this one unique is specifically where the sign is to arguably promote the health and well-being of the rail trail by purchasing the land to keep it nature-like, as
Correct.
opposed to, oh, don't forget to vote, at town meeting. That would be something I wouldn't want, as to the gentleman that spoke earlier. No, that's not what we want. But this is it's almost like you walk into your kitchen in the morning and there's a sign at the coffee maker and somebody says, you like your coffee maker, clean it out the night before. Generally, you don't have a sign on the coffee maker, but if you don't clean the coffee maker out, you won't have a coffee maker that works. So I think it's a unique circumstance, as you said.
So how about just trying to pick up what people said, a motion to recommend to the town manager that the Sudbury Valley Trustee request to place informational signs along the trail from March to April be approved. Does that cover what we need to cover? And then that way we can just make it a motion and we can send a note to the town manager. A motion to recommend that the town manager support the Sudbury Valley Trustees request to be allowed to place informational signs along the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail between March and April.
I think this is a 7-acre property, right? So why don't we limit the number of signs, maybe to 2 or 3?
Discussion?
What do you think? That's a pretty small area, so I think we could
You
just
need a
have.
second before you discuss.
Oh. Can I second that?
Oh, yeah. Who can second? Someone needs a second and then we can discuss.
Second.
I'll second.
Okay, seconded. Okay, Tracy, please go ahead.
That was it. Could we just limit the number of signs to 2 or 3? It's a small area. I think that would reduce the clutter. Maybe it would alleviate all the concerns we've heard.
Okay, and Krista, your thoughts on that, since you're the one proposing or asking?
I think that's fine. We can place them strategically, and as I said, we'll have other ones elsewhere in the neighborhood. So I think that's fine.
Okay. So the motion has been made. We've had discussion. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call a vote on the motion as seconded. Ms. Edelman,
Agree.
Ms. Boardman,
Agree.
Mr. Follender,
Aye.
Ms. Hanson,
Agree.
Ms. Miller,
Aye.
Mr. Soden,
Aye.
Ms. Barker. Are you still here? Yes, you are. I see you.
Aye.
Aye. Mr. Welch is aye. The motion passes. All voting aye. Would the clerk please note that Ms. Barker is present in terms of the roll call? She arrived a few minutes late, and Mr. Soden also, just so we make sure that they're included in the list of who made up the quorum. Thank you very much, Ms. Collins,
Thank you all very much.
and good luck with the project.
Nat,
Thank you.
who's writing the letter?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna
Um,
ask. Who's,
Good point. Do you want to take up, Richard? You'll have a copy of the motion. Would you be willing to send it to the
Yeah.
town manager?
If
Um,
and if Krista could send me background information on the project, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Okay.
You can get my
Send it to
email.
Marcia. Yeah, you can either send it to
Marcia can get it to
Marcia
me. Yeah,
or
thank
me,
you.
and I'll pass it on. Okay. Marcia, is that all we need to do? I just want to make sure we have this covered. If Richard writes it.
Yes, that's it.
Okay. Okay, now
All
ready
right.
to move.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next order of business, coming back now to the Junction Park conceptual redesign. And I'd like to just first quickly review the purpose of this. Is we've been asked by the select board to create a written recommendation for them on the conceptual redesign of Junction Park to ensure the safety and separation of two types of users, wheeled recreational users and pedestrians. This is language that we've used a couple of times in terms of describing what they asked us to do. We're also to include a recommendation for a short-term proposal that augments signage and helps address increased ridership due to the completion of the Route 2 bridge scheduled for July 2022. We need to deliver this recommendation as a committee to the select board no later than June 30th. And so that was our charge. I'd like to ask Tracy, who is chair of the subcommittee, which includes Tracy, Adrian Boardman, and myself, just to give a quick update on kind of where we are. And I think I'm on the docket, Tracy, when you're ready to review the survey results. And then I think you're going to cover some ideas, but I want to turn the floor over to you for a few minutes just to kind of lead us on this.
Oh, all right. So it's been a busy month since we last met as our larger group. We've met 4 times as a subcommittee, once a week. And we started by producing a survey. And so we advertised the survey. We had flyers that Nat graciously posted around town, around the Junction Park area. I know they were on certain billboards around the town. We also had, so the flyer had a QR code. I suppose I should share my, if anyone hasn't seen it, I can pull it up. Basically, we're advertising the survey. And as Marcia said, we actually had a great response. The survey was also shared electronically. Adrian did a great job of posting on social media. We posted on Facebook, Nextdoor. I know members of our committee posted as well. So thank you, Deborah. I'm sure others did it and didn't even tell me because we had such a great response. So we have posted the survey. Nat has done a fantastic job of culling the results and pulling some learnings from it. So he'll be going over that next. And we have our public forum actually planned for next Wednesday. And so after we go, the plan today is to go over survey results and then take a look at all the ideas that were submitted from our committee members and even from a member of the public who submitted an idea. So we'll take a look at survey results and then the ideas.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen if that works.
Works for me.
Okay, let me see. And hopefully everyone will be able to see this. Can you see my my screen, and how do I make it big? Presentation, right? Let's do full screen. Can everyone see that? I know I should be doing presentation, but I can't figure out where this is on this thing. Everyone okay? Okay.
I can see it.
Okay. So just a quick summary. We had 526 respondents as of 11:30 p.m. on February 8th, which is when I started to play with this. There were 10 questions, 3 questions asking for comments. In addition to the 10 data questions, we got lots of positive feedback in the comments about soliciting input. I think a number of people also reached out to say they appreciated the work. There's some very good themes that have started to surface in the comments, which we'll talk a little bit about. And then we'll add in paper surveys that we're still trying to get before the 2016 forum, so we'll update this information. Very interestingly, there have been only 7 paper surveys submitted across multiple collection sites in town. So this just says the world is moving away from paper. I've had to do some recycling based on that. The first question is, how often are you in Junction Park? 55% of the folks are either daily or weekly. I call them frequent users. And they're more likely to be going to businesses rather than continuing on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. While those who report visiting monthly or less than once a month are 61% more likely to be using the Bruce Freeman rather than businesses. I don't think there's any surprises here. I just want, I was just trying to get some sense of where this data is. So a lot of people are using the park to go to walk through, to get to businesses, to do work that they have to do. In this next question, kind of building on frequency, is where are you going? Where are you headed when you're in the park? And so 44%, 44.7, and 40 are going to the Bruce Freeman, and 40% are going to businesses. So 85% are not going to the park, but they're passing through it, either using the trail or going to support local businesses in Concord. I think that's as we think about the economic impact, that's, I think, a number to keep. Less than 5% are going to the park specifically. And then we had a bunch of other people answering questions. Of those who answered other, 13 people, or 37%, listed multiple destinations. In other words, they weren't satisfied just to say, I'm going to businesses, but they wanted to list what they were going to go see. And again, all this data will be, the full survey results will be posted. We will remove any email addresses that people had shared with us who were looking for more information. So any of you who are data geeks can dive in. Question 3, which is, what's your primary transport mode? We're trying to get a sense of, are people walking? Are they biking? Are they doing multiple things? And the answer is 90% of the respondents report either walking, biking, or they say, I walk and bike. So they're doing both in the park. Walking or pushing a stroller was the next most common category. And then pushing a stroller was under 1%, and then all others. And there were a pant load of other kinds of things that people were doing in the park. 6 people reported that they use a car as primary transport mode in the park, which I thought, I haven't seen anybody driving cars in there, but that was interesting. We had 6 people responding with regard to a wheelchair, walker, or cane. And just for clarity purposes, I'm still waiting to get written survey responses from Concord Park, so that number may go up as we bring that data in from the written responses. And then 4 answered rollerblading or skateboarding or some variation of that. So it's pretty clear that walkers, there are a lot of walkers going through the park. If you're a cyclist, you probably add up the biking and walking biking piece to say, hey, we got a lot there, but the walkers, you can add that back into the walking. So it's pretty clear the use for the park. I'll pause at question 3. Any questions from the committee? Okay. Question 4 was, do you know what the official path is for the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail? Pardon me, that's my bird clock. I apologize. I'll wait for it. 65% know the official path, which is around the Club Car Cafe. More problematically, and there's some other data here that I think the committee, we're going to have to think through. 1 in 5 believe it's straight across the railroad tracks. And that was consistent with whether they listed themselves as a walker or a biker and walker. 1 in 5 think they just go straight across the railroad tracks. 20% of walkers and 12% of bikers responded, I don't know where the trail goes, which was interesting. While only 5% of those who self-named as walker bikers chose, I don't know. So this going across the tracks, I think, is something that will we should keep in mind. Question 5 was the percent of time that they see people, that the respondent to the survey sees a person not dismounting. So 42% of the respondents said that they see riders dismount 75% of the time. The opposite of that is 42% say only 25% of the time or less do they see people not dismounting. 75% or more, 66% said the dismount rate is up to 50%. So 2/3 of the people say half the time people dismount. Only 16% of those responding said they observed riders not dismounting 75% of the time. When you look through the comments, there's a fair amount of comments related to people dismounting, people not dismounting, people saying, I'm never going to dismount. We even had someone say, I can't dismount because I have a bad hip. So I think this dismounting question will take a little time to think through. 75% of the people basically are aware that there is signage to do that. So those that don't dismount are obviously ignoring the signs. Question 9 is, would you support major structural changes? And I should note that many of the comments that I'd like to know what the structural changes are, that would be helpful to have that. So of this question, almost 18% left it blank. Of those that responded, while more supported structural change to the park versus those that didn't, it was not 50%. So this is something I think we need to explore more in the public design. What do major structural changes mean? What was interesting was that of the high frequency users, daily or weekly, 52% of those who answered question 9 supported structural change. And of the monthly or less users, 61% supported major structural change. So again, just reflecting on the numbers. And then finally, roughly 89% of the respondents live in Concord, so 90%. And just comparing the age to the census data for the town, the survey significantly underrepresents people under 40. So the survey data are the blue bars, and the orange ones are from the 2019 survey census data that's available. So you can see here, we underrepresent those up to 40 years old, because this is all blue that's here, and we overrepresent those 41 to 80 years old. I happen to fall in that latter category, so I feel well represented. But I just wanted folks to know kind of how does this play out versus what the demographics of the town are. So observations on the comments. Well, let me pause for 1 second. Are there any questions with regard to the data so far? Okay.
I don't have a question. I was just going to comment that with respect to this particular slide, yes, the ages are not represented. It just means that the people that are using the rail trail are not indicative, not a one-to-one match with the demographics of the town. That's
right. People who use the park. That's correct.
At least the people who took our survey. It doesn't mean that our survey is indicative of who's using the park either.
That's even true. And you could say, who answers surveys?
Right.
People that are
people who have time.
Right. Yeah.
I think it's, well, I also think, the methodology we use to reach out really cast a wide net. And I was talking with someone from Concord Park, and she was saying, it's good that you have the QR code there, but half of our people don't even have a cell phone, right? So I think this is more representative of the people who use the park. This is my opinion, and I'm perfectly willing to be wrong. And it doesn't necessarily have to reflect the demographics of the town. I was just trying to think of ways to kind of compare what we're seeing with what's out there.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I think age matters here, because ultimately we'll be making recommendations that will then impact the people that are using the park, which arguably are related to the people who provided us all this input. So it is very important. Yeah.
And I'm not an expert survey taker nor probability specialist. So I'm always ready to be corrected. So I tried to take a couple of looks at the comments. I essentially read every single comment and tried to say, well, this comment feels like people are saying there's an issue, or I want to give an idea or whatever. So this is not scientific, but this is like a back of the envelope reading all, I don't know, what were they, probably close to 1,000 comments across all the questions, or maybe 800. So question 7, what observations do you have regarding BFRT safety in Junction Park? And again, I just pulled out some of the key things. Of the things I pulled out, 33% of the comments indicated that the park was safe or that safety was not an issue from their perspective, while 20% indicated the opposite. I only put this in here because I think our charge is to improve safety. And so we may need to have some education for those who don't think it's an issue. There were some respondents who said, very few, who said, oh, this is a waste of time. You shouldn't even bother. It's a waste of time and money. And certainly, I don't agree with that. But I think it's important that we kind of share, here's what we're hearing from the folks. 20% had comments related to improving signage and wayfinding. And then 10% commented on the Mbta track crossing. Some of the comments in the Mbta track crossing were safety related. Others were, that's the way we should have the trail go through, so on and so forth. And again, this is not complete, and I would encourage everyone to spend the time to read some of the comments. Read all the comments. Question 8, do you have any ideas on improving safety in the park or on the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, or suggestions for what to keep in mind when doing so? A wider range of comments. We got a lot of comments about ideas. 16% of them related to separating out bikes from pedestrians, which again is related to the request from the select board. 15% made comments about improving signage, and I only noticed that because there's been a lot of discussion over the last year about the effectiveness of signage, and yet people still, it's still a topic, and there probably are things we can learn about improved signage from that. 11% of the comments related to the improving safety of the Mbta crossing. There were a whole bunch, that's an unscientific term. There were quite a few comments about putting in gates and fences. Some of the gates were at the front of the park in terms of, near the street to force people to get off bikes. Some of the gates were related to like crossing gates at the Mbta crossing. And then 9% by my quick count suggested rerouting the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail away from the park. Again, we've asked people for ideas, and so I just wanted to share this was something that popped out as I read through them. Question 10 is any specific or additional comments? Of those additional comments, 25% of them related to specific ideas around what we should do to change the design. 16% were some form of no changes are needed, and 12% were very positive comments about the Bfrt and value to its town. And I kind of sandbagged this because I just wanted to say people do appreciate the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, and I thought I should call it out. And then finally, a couple of unexpected comments. I have no idea where this came from. I suggest you mind your own business, you wicked stickler. That's an actual comment. I don't know what it refers to. Someone made comments about dogs on the trail. Someone responded in a request for an opinion to say, I don't have an opinion. And then a couple of other ones that I thought were, people will continue to be stupid. Stop telling cyclists to dismount. We don't tell people to get out of their cars and push them across intersections. And then I didn't realize this area was considered a park. It's very small. And then you can put all the signs up you want, but most cyclists, including me, aren't going to get off their bikes and walk the planned route. So when you look through the comments, you will see both very helpful and some very pointed comments that come from folks. And that's what I would expect from a survey of this size. But I just want to share a couple that popped out at me. So I will stop my share and ask if any questions or comments on this, and we will post this this PowerPoint on the website. And again, I would suggest that everybody read the comments directly. I picked out what I saw, and I do not want it to be considered as a representation of this committee's opinion. It's merely what I saw. Richard.
I just want to quickly thank the crew who did this. I mean, I'm really blown away by the quality of your thought on this and the process. And Tracy and Adrian, you've brought such enthusiasm to this. I'm really impressed. And the only question I have is, how the heck did you get this analyzed so fast, Nat?
I started at 11:30. I ended at 2 o'clock roughly.
Last
And I
night?
did some polishing recently.
Oh.
So, yeah. I
Well,
was,
thank you. Thank all of you. I mean, I think this is a tremendous example of civic duty beyond the call. And I think everybody is going to be very appreciative of this process as we move forward.
okay. Other committee member comments or questions?
I would just echo what you said, Nat. So the question of dismounting, there was about equal opinion that bikes should dismount, and as many people felt that bikes didn't need to dismount, that really it was a question of speed, of,
Right.
of controlling speed through the park. So that's something to think about. And just thinking through like the problems that people identified. For me, when I read the survey feedback, the train was really the one that stood out for me. The issue that there are train tracks and they're inherently dangerous, and the fact that there's no notification that the train is coming other than seeing it or hearing it.
At that crossing, yeah,
right?
at that crossing, yeah.
And then there were concerns about the mix of people on wheels and people not on wheels, and the fact that they're going different directions, moving at different speeds. And there was concerns about dogs, as we saw, concerns about cars, actually. So that's another piece we have to think about, cars on the road. And oh, Ellen, I guess that was your comment.
Yeah.
But feel free to add to it. So we have to think a little bit out of the box, and that was what the comments brought to light.
Well, I also appreciated that this dismount, not dismount, I think, goes into our planning. If we have a conceptual redesign, separates bikers from walkers, and we can do it in a way that, meets our principles and so on, then we've kind of taken care of that in some way. And that's what was, for me, that's part of the joy in seeing all this data is many hands, many eyes, many brains thinking about this. And, I came into this with I'll admit a bias that we're not supposed to look at the crossing, the Mbta crossing. And after reading all this, I think, at some point that should be part of our discussion. Whether it's part of our recommendation will be up to the committee, but there were some eye-opening comments from me. Other committee members, and then I'll get to the public.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that when I first joined the committee, and I really appreciate Tracy, the question you had, because I didn't know where White Pond was. I didn't know what Junction Park was. And it wasn't until that cold day, I agreed with, when I read that comment, I was like, I feel the same way. That's a park. I didn't think it was a park, but I understand why it's considered a park. I understand the natural habitat that they've created. I understand now. But so all of those things brought me back when I read the comments. But the number one thing that reverberated to me was every other rail trail I've ever been on has never gone through an actual train. It's a rail trail. What's a rail trail? It's where trains used to be and not where they're at now. And I was reminded of that and how this is extremely unique. And when I read and Tracy and I exchanged some messages, and sorry, Tracy, I didn't see your most recent email. We weren't able to talk, but when I took a step back, I said, did the town in good faith make a plan back then in 2012 that may have contributed to the situation? And should we re-examine this direction? So those were the thoughts that I had.
Yeah. I think I do want to make a comment about what happened however many years ago it was. I've been, over the last year, I've heard a lot and spoken to a lot of different people who have different views on it. And one of the things I think I said to the select board, and I want to stick with it, is that what happened in the past happened in the past. And our job is not to judge or to try and tease out what actually happened. Our job is to take where we are today and come up with the best recommendations we can. So I want to make sure that as a committee, since we committed to the select board to do that, that we keep a focus on going forward, and creatively come up with a conceptual redesign to improve safety in the park. So, Ms. Quackenbush, you
Yeah,
introduce yourself.
Thank you so much for doing the survey. I'm surprised there were only 9 paper copies. I was at the voting at Hunt Gym and I thought I had at least 10, but maybe they weren't turned in. But I really
Six from Hunt Gym, 1 from Town Hall,
cool.
none from the libraries.
Well,
I'm waiting for Concord Park.
no end. Anyway, a couple of things on safety. I think I'm glad that you're going to talk to Concord Park, because at least the experience, and I'm part of West Concord Green Thumbs, which has been very concerned about safety. The Concord Park, as well as Concord Children's Centers, they don't go there anymore because of the worry. I mean, you think my father used a walker and he probably would have been pretty concerned about the speed, as you mentioned, of people using the park versus what the Concord Park people do is they want to go from Concord Park to West Concord Pharmacy. And I think a lot of people, seniors, consider it dangerous. And the Concord Children's Center teachers often get the kids to play in the little kind of a place with the kind of semicircle stone wall, which is really beautiful. And so I wonder if, you don't have the bias of response of people saying it's safe because those are the people who responded to the surveys. I think some people do not use the park. So I'm just saying, my impression was people are not using the park, and that was based on some letters that were sent to the select board because they don't consider it safe. For current users, omit latent users. I was amazed that 65% of the people know where the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail go. I actually think they don't pay attention to it at all. They go right across the railroad track. At least that's been my observation when I did some totally informal tracking of people, whether they dismount or not. So I think the challenge is people go right across the railroad track, which is problematic for safety and also problematic in terms of how much money was spent to reroute around Club Car Cafe. So I would say that it isn't safe, and it isn't safe for some important demographics: kids, toddlers, young people, and seniors. So, I just would ask you to please consider that the respondents, I think, might have a bias in terms of who responded. And by the way, I responded. And by the way, thank you again for doing the survey. It was well thought out, and I really appreciated it. And it was delightful writing all my great comments. So thanks.
Your comments are not attributed to you because I don't know which one you did, and we're going to keep it that way.
Yeah,
I would say,
I understand.
I would say I'm not a I'm not a statistician, so I can't speak to the if you were to do the whatever it is, normal distribution versus what the surveys were, how close we were. But I would think that 526 people is a pretty wide sample. Because of the way we distributed it. That does not change your, it doesn't diminish what you said. It just means that there, as we expected in opening this up to the community, there are a lot of voices and people feeling, very strongly. As I kind of quoted that guy, "You never get me to dismount," a little bit tongue in cheek, because it's like we don't have to have, we have to figure out how to work together. But I think that getting all these voices out and then using that to kind of guide our, the conversation is what we're trying to intend.
And just one other comment. Chris Whalen, we all know Chris Whalen, noted that Junction Park was, in his view, one of the best parks and the highest used and most valued parks in all of Concord. It's small, but I think people get a lot of delight over sitting and having lunch that they get from Club Car Cafe. So I think small, yes, but important as well.
Yeah. When you take a look at the comments, you will also note that there were a number of comments about younger people and kids,
right?
Being too fast. And I had a personal experience of watching someone in my age group and above whip right through the park on their bike. And so I think that this, we all have anecdotal stories. And so as a committee, we have to go ahead and figure out, all right, what are we hearing, and then come up with what we can. Any other comments from the public? Okay. Trying Tracy, you're on for the next round.
Sure. So what I wanted to do was, well, first let me show you briefly. Share my screen for a second. So as I said, we have a public forum on Wednesday, February 16th, and I hope everybody, well, frankly, everybody present here, I hope everybody can come, but certainly our community members at least. So am I sharing properly? Did I?
Yep.
Okay,
You're good.
Great. So you can see the public forum flyer that we just created. We'll be dispersing this around. Hopefully we get at least as many people who filled out the survey to see it. We'd love to get a great audience and participation at our next meeting. So as you can see, our goal here, or the reason we're meeting together, is because there will be increased traffic in the park. And as Nat pointed out, only 65% of people said they know where it goes, and that's if you believe them, the number actually might be lower, right? And now we're going to be getting people from other towns who've never been in this park and will be probably even more confused than somebody who's been there a few times before. So the traffic situation and the confusion in the general area will get worse. And what I wanted to do next was look at some ideas. Did I share properly that you're still seeing PDFs? Okay.
Can I just pause you for 1 second, Tracy? I just want to frame the context of what you're going to show next. So the meeting agenda is posted for the 16th. And we're going to do a little bit of background on kind of the history, how we got here, what it looks like today, results and learnings from the survey. And then the subcommittee and the committee thought it would be a good idea to kind of have some things to share to start the conversation rather than a blank screen. We thought, well, if there are 4, 5, 6, 7 ideas that come up beforehand, and these can be submitted by the public, then we can use those to kind of throw up against the wall virtually and kind of start the conversation. Because there aren't unlimited ways to do it. So the intent here was to, start that process of saying, here's some ideas. These are ideas and nothing more than that. And they're going to be part of the discussion in the forum and ongoing, and they can be changed, whatever. So go ahead, Tracy. I just want to make sure that people understood the context.
Yeah, and we have to present something by end of June, which is not actually that far away. And we only meet once a month as a committee. So like Nat said, we want to get some initial ideas so that when we meet with the public, we have something to propose. It's probably not going to be the best. Well, I don't want to I'm sure we're going to come up with something great, but it might not be the most stellar idea, but it's a starting point for the conversation that we have something to show and something to critique and improve.
Tracy, could you do me a favor, just with your pointer, your whatever, just like, because I struggle with visually sometimes, just say, okay, for example, here's the end of the rail trail. You go both ways on Main Street, you cross.
Okay. So right here, if you can see my cursor, this is where 99's is. And
99 was, there's no 90.
The restaurant.
99 is, sorry, so this is West Concord, first of all. West Concord, this is the Commonwealth Ave here. So this is Woods Hill Table.
Okay.
Train tracks behind it. This is 99's here. 7-Eleven is over here. Or maybe here. And then the rail trail comes across on the other side of the street right here.
Okay.
And then currently there is a crosswalk that goes this way. And then there's a crosswalk this way.
Okay. And then the Junction Park, that area where you have like the cement sign that says, okay.
Yep. And so this is this colored area. This is Junction Park, technically. And
the train is right behind it.
Yeah.
Like where the actual train goes.
That's a different view.
Okay.
I'm just trying to see if I had a, well, and here's another view of the park. Yeah. So the train is here, right?
Okay.
99.
Got it. Yeah. This is good.
Okay, Woods Hill Table. Yep. Okay. And so you can see the 2 crosswalks here. Maybe this is a better view. Rail trail here. And then of course the rail trail right now goes through the park. You can't really see it all that well. It's confusing here, just like in real life. You take a left and then it loops around here and then hops on the green line here. Okay.
Or they just go through the parking lot and.
Right, or they do what they want to do. Yeah, fastest way to get there is a short line. Okay, so I thought we would each basically share a bit. I'll go around like we're in kindergarten. So Dorcas, if you don't mind, I have yours first. If you would just, are you able to talk actually? Let me.
I think so.
No,
Okay.
you can. Good, perfect. Thank you, Dorcas.
So just talk us through your idea.
Oh, mine were, I think the most critical one is to have, probably the trained people have to do it, is to visually block the shortcut from the park that goes straight across the tracks. That is, I think people just see it and they just go straight. So I think that's the most critical thing, and I think that's something the trained people have to deal with. They can still get around it with you know, suitcases and strollers and pedestrians, but just a visual block. Then the second one was where it makes the big left-hand turn, put a large stop and dismount sign, or this other person said a barrier gate, that other thing, because people zoom around that corner and wipe out anybody standing there. And I've been nearly wiped out myself a couple of times, so I know that's true.
It's a
And
pretty
then
sharp turn.
the last thing I had said is we may have to add more fencing over in the parking area to keep people on the path so that they don't go astray. I think there's some ambiguity there to my mind when where you come off the rail trail and where you're supposed to go from there.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's great.
That's a good point. I'm not clear, where would the fencing go? I know we don't really have this on the map.
You would be fencing to prevent people from going across the parking lot, I think is what Dorcas said. Is that right,
Yeah,
Dorcas?
keep them
Okay.
out of the parking lot, can keep them from going across the railroad tracks.
Okay. This, Tracy, you want to keep moving?
All right, Nat, you're up.
Oh, okay. So I had two ideas. The first one is essentially the lower left is Commonwealth Avenue where the crossing is right now. The yellow areas are these designate where the park is now, and the white areas are the current paths. So if we were to consider doing a redesign, this is a very simplistic approach of move everything to one side, and it's a fenced bike lane and it connects right to the trail on the other side. Again, this is an idea just to throw it out there as a way to do it.
And just to be clear, so if right now I'm on the rail trail, I stop my bike and I can cut across, go through the park. What you're saying is change that so that you'd create a fenced area that forces me to sort of go on Common Ave and cut around.
You would come to the park from the Assabet River, and it would say bikers stay left, and they would stay left into the blue area to be a fenced off area. And it would essentially be a well-marked bike lane only for bikes. And there's some horrible things about this, but it's just, let's start with, here's an idea. And so let's move to the next one, because that was the second one, which is, so this idea was to not impact as much of the water retention, other things on that side of the park, but to expand the walkway more to the east and essentially create two lanes. So B would be for bikers. There would be essentially a way to separate them. P would be pedestrians, and they would be fenced somehow, keeping the bicyclists and the pedestrians separated. The P on the left side, with a circle on it, that would be a bike parking area, because it's, I just thought of that, or it could be filled in with more plantings and so on. And the place where the X is, which is where the tracks are, the remnants of the crossing point of the two rail lines, north, south, east, west, That would be open to both, all right, but you couldn't bring your bike through. So people could walk, could park their bikes, walk in. On the right side, pedestrians would walk through the little dots there, like it's a brick walk or something. Now this envisions making structural changes, and so maybe you take back some paving and change it around. But this is an idea of creating separation at the south end, and making it very clear that bicyclists, if you want to go through, you go through, but you stay out of the pedestrian area. So two quick ideas. And CCC is the cafe, and MBTA are the tracks. And I didn't deal with the track. And the 7-Eleven is the 7-Eleven. Okay, so that was mine.
Very good. Richard?
Which one? Yeah. Am I muted? No.
No, you're good.
Yeah, basically, if you start on Com Ave again down there, there's a set of bollards there now. So could another row kind of be offset so that you couldn't, it would be wide enough for someone to negotiate in a wheelchair, let's say, or a stroller, but it'd be difficult to get through on a bike. Not impossible, but that would discourage perhaps people doing that. Somebody mentioned at one of the meetings, nicer weather, whether we can actually have some extra tables out along the way that would make it kind of crowded to ride your bike through there potentially. And then also at where the turn is at the Club Car Cafe, again, try the bollard thing, maybe that would work, or some kind of way that again would force people who came around that corner to basically walk their bikes if they weren't already walking, which they're supposed to be doing. So those are just a couple of ideas. I think I forgot to look at the rail trail. I guess there's bollards there already at the railroad track. Is that correct? Does anybody know that?
There are, these, I think these 5,
okay.
right? 6, those are bollards, and these are
So
planters.
I think I forgot to add the notion of somehow. And the other thing was, signage. Some people, based on the survey, is sort of typically what we think. They may or may not see it or pay attention to it. But if we had on the bollards themselves, I like the Deborah's idea that we have signifiers that people could see that, sort of a circular walk wheels or something on the bollards, so they see that the bollards were basically enforcing that to some extent. And I looked online, there are actually semi-temporary bollards you could get. It doesn't have to necessarily be a huge granite thing. It could be tried. I think in some cases, maybe we want to try some things that wouldn't be totally permanent, but would be safely installed and everything, but wouldn't necessarily be there forever, to see how they work.
Just a quick question, Richard. This is a longer term or a shorter term?
That's short term.
Yeah, because I think mine were both long term and need a lot of work or need to be thrown out, but they were kind of thinking long term. Okay.
Yeah.
And then long term?
But this is my long term, it looks like.
That's good. Look at that.
Oh, I must have shared. Okay, sorry. This is a different PDF apparently. Long term. There we go.
Yeah, so I think it sort of it goes along with what Nat was talking about in terms of, I don't think this is quite get it, but it's like, take along the left side, if we're looking at it, of the park, basically turn it into a trail.
That's what you meant.
I like the idea in a perfect world. We've already got a paved thing over there called the parking lot, and is there any way to just grab that? I understand the reasons why we can't just do that, but I just want to have that out there as something in a world that would then save the park and keep the park basically in its current configuration, and we would lose parking.
Great. Okay.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you. All right, Adrian. Short term.
I'm still seeing Richard for some reason.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Tried to get everything in one place. And all right, short term. You seen that?
Yeah, so short term, I had a similar idea to you, Richard, which was to install some type of like ballard and chain fencing to kind of visually and physically discourage people from staying on their bikes from access from both ends. The picture on the bottom left is actually from Monument Street in Concord when there's access to like the Old North Bridge area. I would assume that a lot of people would want to ride their bikes down there, but I've never seen someone on their bikes. And so thought if it's something that, works potentially well somewhere else in town, we could kind of leverage a similar idea. So it's still accessible for pedestrians, it's still accessible for people, pushing strollers or with mobility support devices, but makes it much harder for a bike to weave through there. So this was my idea for kind of a short term, preserve the park, don't touch it, just try to add, additional physical things to make it really hard for someone to physically stay on their bike going through the park. And then this next one, I think that there are a lot of comments in the survey about the benefits of having kind of separated uses of Junction Park, and that one of the issues is you have all these different types of transportation and types of uses converging on a very small space. So I was looking at ideas to kind of physically separate the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail from Junction Park. Option one on the right is one that I think Nat and others have presented already, which is just physically move kind of the bike lane of the park to the side, kind of parallel to the Club Car Cafe, but still keep it within the general footprint of the park. The other, I don't think I would recommend, but it's certainly an idea. There's a lot of kind of negatives with it, but it's actually to establish a bike lane along Commonwealth Avenue. I think in like an ideal world, it would be something that would be great. People wouldn't have to dismount. People wouldn't have to converge with pedestrians. They could just kind of loop around that way. Obviously, there'd be a significant loss of parking. I mean, businesses there like Woods Hill are already very strapped for parking. So wouldn't recommend it unless there was some other way that we could add parking to that area, but trying to think outside the box and without any limitations. Another idea that I came up with of how you could reroute the rail trail.
Thank you. All right, I'm up. So I go into detail with everything, as you can see, but just generally, I'm thinking Freedom Trail on this. So think of when you're in Boston, there's a red line on the ground. It's really clear where to go. You go for miles in the city and you always know where to go because of that line on the ground. So I think for short term, we could have spray paint that comes off over time, right? We could even test this out and see if it solves the problem, if it indicates where to go. Long term, it could be something really attractive, maybe like a different kind of stone that you follow along. Or maybe it's a pattern in the brick, kind of like they did in Boston, where you have the red brick in the middle and two different colored bricks on the side, something really nice looking. But the idea is that anywhere is, well, ideally the whole length of the trail in Concord would have this signifier that you're on the trail, which is easier to do if it's paint, of course, but certainly in a beautiful park area like this, I would hope that it could be the pretty brick. And I know in Boston, I think the trail does actually change how it looks, but either way, you're looking at the ground and you're trying to follow the line. So that was the main idea here, that you actually have this clear path to follow. And then there are ideas about, way beyond the park, really off the map here, indicating to people that they need to look at the ground and look for the path, because, then you have to have signs about congested area, look for the path so you know where to go. So that's one idea. I also, I really don't like the idea of dismounting personally. I think it's pretty clear that if we want all to be enjoying this park, which is the whole point, I've read the history of the park. The rail trail was intended to go through the park years and years ago. So we do need to make this a park for pedestrians, for cyclists, skateboarders, everybody you can think of. And cyclists are going to go around the park if we don't encourage them to use it. So if you force them to dismount and really make it a pain in the neck, have all these obstacles everywhere, I think everybody's going to go in the street, and it is not safe to bike in the street. And it's really nice as a cyclist to have a rail trail where you feel safe. It's like the one area you're not going to get hit by a car. So I really think it's important that we not go even further with the dismounting requirement personally. That said, I spent some time talking with Anne, and it turned out that I just kind of agreed with her thinking before she even told me it's based on psychology and whatnot. But Anne Sussman, who is a town resident, she was telling me how she actually teaches on architecture and psychology of indicating where to go subconsciously. And so I think that's really important that we take that into account with our design. And basically have unconscious signifiers of where to go, whether we, like Dorcas at the beginning had mentioned, having a barrier at the end before the train tracks. I think that's important too. I put, there's lots of different ways to do this, but for me, it was overlapping fences that from a distance look like a wall, and we could make it really attractive with vines on them, or they maybe aren't maybe it's not a fence, maybe it's like huge bushes or something. But the point is, when you get closer, you realize that you can get through them when you're a pedestrian, but when you're a cyclist, you're like, oh, that's not the way to go. And then you look for the way to go. I also thought we could make the area towards the train tracks very clearly a pedestrian area by actually increasing the number of tables, so that when you're on the rail trail, you'd say, oh, okay, that's definitely not the way. There's a fence, there's tables, like, I don't want to go there. And again, they look for where to go. I also like the idea of distinguishing between the pedestrian area and the rail trail area. So I was going to add some planters along the path, just kind of signifying separating people, because you not only want to keep the cyclists away from the people, but rail trail users don't want people swerving on their area either. So you really do want to separate the two areas.
Tracy, could we cognizant of the time, so could we move through these a little bit more? I don't think we need to go into that much detail. These are just ideas for folks, so thank you.
Okay. Long term.
Sorry. Yeah, okay. No, I was going to say maybe when you're done, because I didn't do a map, but I'll just speak now and just say that generally my thoughts were represented. I gave short-term and long-term solutions, and some of my comments earlier gave you a good sense, but I feel comfortable that all of that, what I provided, was represented so far.
Okay. And I will say I did this based on the survey. I changed it multiple times based on what people said. So, okay. Long term, basically doing what Nat, Adrian, a bunch of you have basically said, trying, this is actually Anne's idea, but it's similar. Differentiating the rail trail. I still think we should have the line on the ground. I think we should have a separator. It could be a fence, it could be trellises with plants, it could be just beautiful plants that create a natural barrier and indicate that there's a differentiation on the ground. Maybe that's a way to still have retention. I think that we should add a no turn on red sign for cars here, so that they pay attention to people. And what else do I have? Oh, and I think that we should indicate that a train is coming with flashing lights. So I put flashing lights here and here, I think. So that's kind of that idea. Anne's idea from the town was similar to this. She wanted to reroute traffic, make the tables more inviting by giving them protection, because you actually don't sit where you don't feel safe. So you need like a plant behind you or a wall in order to stay. She said that's why these tables aren't used. She wanted to make it more clear that you're going this way, which she said you can accomplish by not having people go this way and then this way, which is counterintuitive and people don't naturally want to do that. And she also brought up a good point that I don't know if the speed limit is, but it's actually a lot higher than this. So she suggested we recommend a lower speed limit for cars given the increased traffic. And also that the crosswalk should go from 99 to the bike path instead of having people go from 99 to Junction Park and then back the other way. So adding a different crosswalk.
Okay.
And then just sharing 2 pictures that were shared through either conversations with town people or through the survey, looking at cities and other countries for inspiration, maybe having a like a folder where we put images of things we come across that we think would be good to implement here. So that's really it. But I think I missed Deborah and you had a plan. Let me find where I put that. Short term. All right, am I still sharing?
Yes.
Okay, Deborah.
And I'm conscious of time. Ooh, there we go.
What's the big idea, Deborah, for the short term and then one for the long term?
Oh, you're on mute, Deborah.
You put yourself on mute.
Still on mute.
Still on. There you go.
Okay. Yes. Good. Okay.
Yes.
Big idea for short term is you gotta fix the train, have the big things that come down, flashing signs. That was the number one. And then the long term is to see if there's an appetite to reassess separating out the rail trail from the park so that the traffic is completely separated. I appreciate all of the ideas here. I continue to ask the question if we're trying to make a round hole fit a square peg, which can be done. Apollo 13 landed safely, but so that's my long term, is to say, hey, can we completely change this so that we have a beautiful park, and separate from that, it's really Nat's idea. So that's the big summary.
You mean separate the rider, the people on wheels from the people who are walking?
Yep.
Okay. I'm not sure that's my idea. I may have
Okay.
verbalized it, but I think it's one of, I think many people have said we need to separate the two. So I'm parroting that objective, which the committee said. I think this is very helpful. Again, I want to remind everyone that these are not, the request was, hey, do you have any ideas? Let's kind of throw some stuff up, see what people think in preparation for the 16th. You know, we're going to talk about the design principles, talk about the challenges. The subcommittee's got to figure how do we get some ideas up here so people can react. I think this has been very helpful from the perspective of going through a variety of things. And I guess I do want to watch our time, but I would like any other thoughts or comments on this kind of like first experiment of, you know, throwing some ideas out there. Anybody have anything they want to?
Is there
Greg
anything
Mueller?
anyone feels strongly against? Maybe we start there.
Greg
I
Mueller,
don't
please.
necessarily. Yes, Greg Mueller, 95 Stone Root Lane. I'm just wondering, all these are really creative ideas. Are any of these constrained, or what are the funding sources that would enable these changes?
It's a great question.
Ideation?
This is an idea. So the charge was come up with a conceptual redesign or conceptual design, which means we are, on one hand, very positive. We're unconstrained, right? I think what we've tried to do first was to establish some principles. And actually, if you can share, let me share the screen, Tracy.
Mhm.
If you could, we came up with a set of design principles that we talked about, balancing the need for safety with the need to keep the park aesthetically pleasing, inclusive, and welcoming. Meet the needs of 3 types of users, probably 2 types, but 3 types is what we talked about. Include the recommendations for the areas surrounding Junction Park, hence the discussion about the MBTA or the other side. Suggest signifiers, which you saw some there, but I won't read through all of these, but you can see them. These principles are kind of guiding the ideas we have. I'm both embarrassed and excited by my really ugly, first one, which is, kind of putting something over on the left side of the park, depending on which side you're coming in from. It's not designed to be the answer, but as a way to say, can we start with this and make it better? And that's the whole point of this conversation, is not to come up with a budget, but to say the 2 things. One is, what do we do in the short term? And there've been a variety of ideas that have put out for that. And then if we had a long-term view and, we could say, well, some money could be spent and we're meeting our principles. This is an idea we have. And then it's really up to the select board and the town and obviously town staff to say, this is doable, we could do something here, and this is what it would cost, and then it goes through that process. So we are both unconstrained by money, but that also, I think we have in the back of our head, we can't do something crazy like, let's build a bridge across Route 62 and the railroad track, and that will solve everyone's problem.
And
or
a nice fence. Yeah,
and a nice,
fence.
right, and a nice fence. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers the question, but we're
No.
trying to ideate.
Thanks.
Okay. Tracy, thank you very much for putting these all together. I appreciate it.
Well,
And-
everybody did a great job.
Yeah.
I just wanted to more formally acknowledge the incredible work that Tracy and the subcommittee did. I was not involved, so I'm allowed to say this. Just one of the participant who just spoke, the survey results, the data, how Tracy just did a great job of culling it all together. This is the first time I've seen anything like this in a government committee, so I'm just very I really appreciate this work.
So we're not a government committee, but we are a set of, we are an advisory committee. I have to be careful.
Advisory. I've never seen anything like this in a group associated with any advisory that might have something to do with the government.
What I hope is that and this will be posted, the people who see this across the town will feel free to send comments, ideas, emails, your own drawings, what you loved, what you hated, what you might change. We have the email address, which is the BFRTAC, the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee, easy to remember. BFRTAC at concordma.gov. And those will, things that come to us, we will make sure are posted and bring them into the forum on the 16th. We have gone almost 2 hours. There is one other item on the agenda after this, which is really a discussion of trail counts and Route 2 bridge. But I'd like to bring this to a close, this section to a close, if everybody is okay with it, or if we're comfortable enough to be able to move on. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of questions and ideas and so on, but I'd like to move on to the next one. Ms. Quackenbush.
Just asking whether the various ideas and the survey results will be posted.
Yes, everything will be posted. Marcia can tell me where. I think we're trying to set up a separate folder for Junction Park.
Right.
And it will have also the historical information, including, for those of you who haven't seen it, I can't remember if it was 6 alternatives that were considered back in somewhere in the 2000s. There's extensive information, some of which I passed to the committee earlier this week. All that data is available on the website. And we're going to try and make it easy for people to find everything related to this. I guess the question with the survey is we can certainly post where we are as of today, or excuse me, as of 2/8 at 11:30 at night, whenever it was I started, so that it matches the PowerPoints, and we'll do another round of data analysis and before the 16th.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And send your ideas in, Ellen, please. Anybody else?
Nat, could you
Nat,
Yes.
stop sharing your screen so we could see everyone again?
Sorry.
And I will hope to get that post, I have to work with my staff to get that posted. It probably won't be until Monday or Tuesday next week. But
Okay.
I'll do my best.
Thank you, Marcia. You guys do a lot, so appreciate it. And thank you for reminding me to turn my screen off. The last item for business today is, sorry, let me pull up my agenda here, and it is 2022 planning. Just 2 items. One is, in a second, I'll ask Richard to update us on the Route 2 Bridge opening celebration. The first item is a trail count discussion. Trail count is something that's sponsored by the Metropolitan Planning Organization. We participated last year, but only in one of the 2. And I'm looking for 1 or 2 committee members. If you could reach out to me, I need some help in coordinating volunteers, sending out emails, maybe, overseeing a site or two. We have a few hours of work in May. But it's important for us to do a trail count and to get it done. We had excellent results last year in terms of coverage. And I'd like a couple of pairs of hands. So I'm just going to ask anybody who wants to help to do some of the logistics with it, just reach out to me. So that's all I'm going to say about it. Mr. Follander?
Okay, yeah, I've written up a little piece. I didn't bother to send it yet. To me, the opening of the bridge is a major accomplishment in the growth of the rail trail over all these many years. And so normally there's a ribbon cutting that involves some state officials, local officials, state Mass DOT folks, elected reps, et cetera. And you cut a ribbon and that's about it. I had the notion that perhaps we could make this a little bit more of an event. But the key factor in making that happen, and I have this notion of taking, instead of pure ribbon cutting, we get people on either side of the bridge to take a ribbon and bring it up over the bridge and tie it together. And we have a cadre of folks on, kids and oldsters and walkers and bikes, and we get it filmed with a drone from Minuteman Media. Some of that's possible. I've spoken to Erin Stevens. She's enthusiastic about it. Minuteman Media would be on board. I've spoken to a number of, informally with some other folks on committees in town. They seem interested in it. I could reach out to other folks. However, I think the dilemma is that when can we get a date from Mass DOT? Now, I think Marcia will be our key person on that regard. I know there were many, it seemed like dates got postponed before. So there's two options. One is that we don't worry about coinciding with the actual ribbon cutting with all the politicians in line, because who knows when that would happen. So we could separate the two things. But on the other hand, we need to have formal permission and assurance from Mass DOT that we're allowed to go up on the bridge and do this or do whatever we want to do, which could include, celebration in Junction Park. It might include other towns along the way to have some activities celebrating the rail trail. So at this point, I happened, and this is not related to this, it would be another kind of report or a correspondence. I got a call recently from Audrey Horst, who is the legislative director or something like that for our state senator, Michael Barrett. She has been in contact with neighbors along Route 2. For the newer members of the committee, we were approached by neighbors who live along Route 2 from basically the Rotary to the Acton line. There's a couple of housing developments there, as
For
well
2A.
as 2A, right,
2A.
2A. And then on the other side, housing to the right as well that has recently been developed. And those folks are kind of locked in because there's no sidewalks and there's other attendant problems with traffic. In any event, Senator Barrett's office has reached out to Mass DOT, and Mass DOT is looking at something. I don't know if Marcia knows about this, but I just talked to the person 2 days ago. They're looking at options that could include sidewalks or other measures to allow people to conceivably get access to the rail trail through Acton. So you'd have to see a map to know what I'm talking about. But in any event, so that's one point I want to report. Back to the topic is that I spoke to Audrey Horst about the opportunity, just what I've told you, is that if we want to make this a real true community celebration, we need to have a date. It's going to be hard to get people involved, excited if we say, well, it's going to happen sometime or other, we're not sure when. So my key goal over this next month is to get a date, as well as to kind of informally reach out to get people. But I also would be interested, as Nat just mentioned, if someone offline if we go ahead with something, even if it's the traditional ribbon cutting, I think I know the Friends of the Rail Trail have already committed to being involved. And I'd like to have perhaps another committee member who could help with logistics and such, no matter what kind of celebration we end up having.
And also send you ideas.
Yeah. and
Okay.
send me ideas. I know maybe I'll send out the draft thing I've sent to some folks, to everybody at this point. I didn't want to do it before this meeting because we've got a lot on the agenda already.
So one, just a question I'd ask the committee, which is, how do we feel, or how do you feel as committee members about having a separate day from the official celebration versus trying to figure out how to line up with them? Are there questions or concerns about that?
I have a concern.
Okay. Duly noted from you on that. And you want to say a little bit more about that, Marcia?
I'd like to talk to Richard first, but
Okay.
you don't have an event without the people who helped fund this. And that was our state legislators. And we're talking about millions of dollars contributed toward the construction of this bridge from the federal and the state government.
So we should celebrate with them, the people who helped to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
All right, good.
when do you think they would have a date for that? Would they wait till August or September, probably?
Probably September,
Okay.
when you have more people in town, where you will be happy, where things will be, where people will be present.
Right. And would the bridge be open officially, even though they haven't had the ribbon cutting?
That's a question I cannot answer right now. I would have to coordinate that with the project manager to find out.
Okay, because I think that if it isn't going to happen, if the theory is it's done by July, by contract.
End of July.
The end of July. Well, at that point, you don't want to do anything in August.
No.
That'd be silly. So I agree. I agree with Marcia. I think at this point, any kind of thing should be thought of as hopefully in September, and we come up with a date that can be, and that I think gives us the advantage of being able to plan something with enough lead time to make it happen, and we'll have people back in town in September.
So Richard, what if we pushed on your legislative aide to talk to Barrett, who works the background with MassDOT and all the other people and their folks, but we use them to kind of say, can you help us,
get a date in September.
Get the formal celebration figured out, and we'd like to be part of that discussion so we can include some of the things that relate to our community. We want to celebrate everybody who helped make this happen, to Marcia's point.
Yeah.
And I think we also want to do some things that create some local feel to it. I mean, I know when they opened up whatever the hell the phase was in Acton, I know I was riding it long before they actually did the celebration, but the celebration was around Narrow Pond. And I remember I got a little bandana from Barbara, not directly from Barbara, but from the friends. But it felt like a nice kind of mix of, political doodahs and also some local folks. And I think that would be ideally if we can get Barrett's office to help us with the timing and so on, then we could come up with some really good ideas.
Okay.
I don't know, other committee members thinking? Okay. All right. Does that cover your part?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
I just want to do one other share, which is these are the pictures I've received from the science teacher. I said, have you got anything up? And she said, let me show you a couple of things. And these are temporary. And these are the kids have done it. They explain that. I think I told her I thought the class did a really good job and was quite creative in doing that. I'm not sure when they're going to come down, but it was, I just wanted to share with the committee that, our work and supporting these kids led to this. And I'm sure in their growing up, they'll remember the project that they did along the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. They'll take their kids along the trail, staying out of White Pond, take their kids along the trail and point out where the little project was. So any last thoughts or comments or additions? Then may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Before I do that, our next meeting is going to be March 3rd at 7 p.m. We believe the meeting will be held at the Harvey Wheeler Center in person. It may or may not be. I'm not sure about that. The next subcommittee meeting is the 15th, and the main forum is February 16th. Those are upcoming meetings. The last two have been posted already. March 3rd meeting agenda will be posted before that. And now a motion to close the meeting. I think, John Soden, you had motion. Is that right?
So moved.
So moved.
Second,
Second. Ms. Edelman
Agree.
and Joy Florida. Ms. Boardman,
Agree.
Mr. Follander,
Yes.
Ms. Hanson,
Yes.
Ms. Miller,
yes.
Mr. Soden.
Aye.
Ms. Barker has left, and Mr. Welch says aye. So by vote, this meeting is adjourned at 9:07 p.m. I want to thank everyone for their time, both on the committee and the public for attending, and look forward to seeing you later. Thanks, everyone.